for our world. We'll have a special program today with a guest who will speak about the chemical aspartame, which many of you know from the sweeteners, the artificial sweeteners, and how the lobbyists in Washington were able to bring aspartame on to the public's consumption in the sweeteners and diet drinks, as well as in coffee sweeteners, which despite the fact that the evidence showed for many, many years, a couple of decades actually, the FDA refrained from giving permission for that aspartame to be on the market because science had shown that there were real concerns it could be a carcinogen and could cause cancer and other kinds of problems and illnesses. And yet, because of lobbying efforts, because of high-powered people in powerful places, which Stephen Fox will tell you about. Mr. Stephen Fox is our guest today. He'll be talking in about 5 minutes about this topic. And he'll talk for about 10 minutes. Then we'll have the phone lines open to all of you folks out there. Hopefully you'll call in and take part in the discussion to see how this very important and dangerous food additive has been given a green light to be on our plates and our coffee cups and in our drinks because of lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C. and high-powered people in the Reagan administration. Particularly, we're talking about a person who was the transition team chairman for Reagan when he got elected, Mr. Donald Rumsfeld, and he was able to actually ensure that the right person was appointed to the FDA to push through aspartame as a legitimate product to be put into our foods and our drinks. Very major problem for all of us for all these years and decades. That was back in 1981, and this aspartame ingredient has been on our shelves, on our tables actually, for many, many, many years now. Since 1981, this is 2016. It's a long time. And yet we are trying now, at least many people are, including Mr. Stephen Fox and other groups that he's working with, to get California to label aspartame as a possible carcinogen and therefore to make people cautious about using it. Under Proposition 65, which requires any ingredients that have been shown to be possibly carcinogenic have to be labeled that way and warned. People have to be warned about it in different places. So that we're going to have Mr. Stephen Fox on here in a minute. Let me get back to the concept of reclaiming social justice. What is social justice? It includes economic justice, environmental justice, gender equality and justice, justice and fairness for people who are with disabilities, and fairness and equality for those who are LGBT friends of ours. And we have to look at the fairness and equality of treatment of every human being with dignity. That's what justice is about. Economic justice particularly is about equalizing the gap between rich and poor, bringing it down, at least reducing it to considerably a more manageable level where more people will be in the working middle class and the upper middle class as opposed to the working poor and the poverty-stricken people in the world and in America. Right now, the top 1% owner control 90% of the wealth of this, 50% of the wealth of this country. Top 10% owner control 90% of the wealth, and the gap between rich and poor is now about almost 350 to 1. It used to be 40 to 1 back in 1980 when President Reagan was elected. It has now gone up to 350 to 1, which means a lot more poor people, a shrinking middle class. The middle class has shrunk by 8 to 10% in the last couple of decades in America, and around the world, the same phenomenon is occurring. The top 1% owner control 80% of the wealth of the world today. So all of this comes right home to roost in this topic about food justice and food safety, that those who don't have the funds and the wealth and the income, that 99% of the people of the world in many cases, don't have adequate food to eat or healthy food to eat in many cases. They are stuck with eating food from commercial grocery stores that produce subpar food that has GMOs in it, that has chemicals in it, and that the public is not protected because of special interests in Washington, D.C. and other capitals in the world. So we're going to have Mr. Stephen Fox, and as soon as he calls in, we're going to put him on the line here in about 5 minutes after the hour. Meanwhile, we hope all of you are doing well out there. I know there's a very interesting season of elections with a presidential election coming up and congressional election in the United States. And we have 2 people running for office. So many people are considering, how did we end up with these 2 candidates, and that they have to choose the lesser of 2, whatever you want to call them. On the other hand, we do have to make a choice. There are also 2 other candidates running for president, not just Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, but there's Jill Stein of the Green Party and Gary Johnson of the Libertarian Party as options as well. So it would behoove us to find out all of the issues of who these different candidates are standing, what they're standing on, who is backing them, who is funding them. And as you know, I've written a book and articles on dollar democracy, how big money has bought our system such an extent that it is the less than 0.5% of our population that donates and finances the American campaigns. 80% of the money. 80% of the money comes from less than 0.5% of the U.S. population. That's the money to run for the presidency and for Congress and federal offices, which is staggering when you consider that over 99% of the people don't have much impact in terms of financing these privately financed elections. As a result, the decisions that come out of Washington, D.C., and even the state capitals here end up being decisions most of the time, not 100% of the time, not 100% of the time, but most of the time in favor of the top 1% and those who have the income and the wealth and the means to lobby Congress to help them get elected. And the same thing with the presidency. So it really behooves us to know exactly who is it that's financing these various politicians. And then we can get down to explaining and understanding how to block issues and positions that hurt the public, to block, at least to insist on the labeling of aspartame, the labeling of GMO foods, which could be detrimental to our health and probably is. In fact, the research I've seen, it's not very good for our health. So we'll have to see if we can continue those discussions today, and especially on aspartame. Meanwhile, let us go ahead and continue to talk a bit about not just the gap between rich and poor, but also how that affects our schools, our colleges, our students, our college students who are increasingly in debt. I just took a survey informally in my classes recently. I asked my students, how many of you work between or over 30 hours a week and go to college? And I had 80% of my students raise their hands. 80% are working 30 to 40 hours a week and trying to attend college, trying to take their courses, trying to stay in there and take a full load of classes, which is virtually impossible with that kind of workload outside of the classroom. And many of them have cut back their classes to two classes, that is 6 units instead of taking a full 12 or 15 units. When you cut back your class load to 6 units rather than 12 or 15, you also cut back on the time that you actually increase the time it takes you to graduate from college. The average American college student now is graduating not in 4 years, as I did when I was in college, very easily, because the tuitions were virtually free, and we had textbooks were affordable. We had lots of financial aid for those of us who needed it. We didn't need it. My dad and mom were in middle class, but we only paid $100 a semester of tuition at the University of Texas, North Texas, in Denton. And yet, and the UC students and the Cal State students were paying even less than that here in California. It used to be about $37 a semester at UC Berkeley for law school for Governor Pete Wilson. It was $6 for all 15 units at the community colleges back in the 1970s and 80s in California. $6 for all 15 units, not per unit. That was a service fee. There was tuition-free education. So with that, I was able to graduate in 4 years with 2 bachelor's degrees, go on for a master's degree and finish that in 2 years, and go on to teach, get a great job, being able to buy a home, live the middle-class dream. And the generation that's been coming behind us has had, the generations coming behind that baby boom generation to which I belong, have had more and more difficulty making ends meet, paying for the tuitions, paying for the textbooks, and being able to graduate on time in 4 years. The average graduate in the United States of America is taking 5 years to graduate from university or college with a bachelor's degree. Not 4 years, 5 years, and sometimes it's 6 years. That was right down to the injustice of dollar democracy and the gap between rich and poor in this country. We've got to fix. If we don't fix that, we won't have much of an American dream or a middle class anymore. And as Aristotle said, that you've got to have a solid middle class in order to have a productive and a very democratic society, a small d, lowercase d. And we got to listen to those ancient pieces of wisdom, words of wisdom from Aristotle, from Jefferson, and others who said the same thing. We're getting our call now from our guest, Stephen Fox. Will be right on in a second. Let me answer the phone here and get him on the phone. Good evening. Is this Stephen?
Peter Mathews, is this Stephen Fox?
Yes, Stephen Fox. How are you, sir?
Good. Am I calling the wrong number?
No, this is the correct number. Absolutely correct. And you're on the air now. And I've been introducing the topic a little bit and introducing you slightly. But I would love for you to tell the audience more about yourself and what you've been doing and what you are doing with the issue of the aspartame registration as a carcinogen possible.
My interest in aspartame really goes back to my original interest in monosodium glutamate because it affected me, and I met a physician that wrote a book on it called In Bad Taste, the first medical book on the treatment of MSG. And as time went on, I experienced time and experienced all sorts of weird things, like visual disturbances and headache, and immediately, like within 10 minutes. And I thought, what is in this? So I did a little research, and one thing led to another, and I've become a major, without bragging or anything, I mean, there's only 2 or 3 people in the whole country that are working to get it rescinded by the FDA. It was forced through, to back up a little bit, its history is fascinating.
Yes.
A chemist in 1966 was working on a treatment for stomach ulcers, and he accidentally licked his finger on this chemical that he put together. It's incredibly sweet, 200 times sweeter than sugar. So his corporate bosses, this is a GD Searle in Chicago, said, well, let's patent it. So they patented it, but the FDA, to its credit, turned them down for approving it for human consumption for 15 years. I mean, the FDA has, again, to its credit, had chemists that looked at the molecule and said the phenylalanine and the aspartic acid are 2 non-essential and amino acids that have become neurotoxic when they're released at this level. But the real problem is the methyl ester, which binds the 2 together.
Mm-hmm.
And the methyl ester in this human stomach turns to ethanol, and then when it's absorbed into the system, the liver, now methanol is 5,000 times as toxic as ethanol, which is what people get drunk and run over each other with. So imagine when you hear about, like in Ghana, that 300 people died and 7,000 people went blind because somebody spiked a whole bunch of booze with methanol. That's the stuff. So the liver turns it into formaldehyde, and that's what's lodged in the RNA. Well, it has unknown and unpredictable and, predictable but unknown, the vast array of neurodegenerative responses, the effects from it, from the formaldehyde. So, to its credit, the state of California, the state of California considers methanol a toxic substance, and it's carcinogenic already. That's already been proven. But now they are thinking of adding this label under Proposition 65 to add a warning on every single diet product, Diet Coke, sugarless gum, equal, all the medications that pertain to it, with a label that says this product is known by the state of California to contain a chemical that causes cancer. So
Yes.
for me, this is a huge breakthrough. This isn't banning it. We tried to ban it in Hawaii. We tried to ban it in New Mexico, but we're just overwhelmed by lobbyists and threats from, the big companies that make the stuff, like Ajinomoto in Japan now owns the patent. After Searle sold it to Monsanto, then Monsanto sold it to Ajinomoto, which is the world's largest maker also of MSG, not just aspartame, but MSG. So they hired lobbyists and they hired lawyers, came in and threatened the New Mexico Board of Pharmacy and the Environmental Improvement Board, which has the control over food products, basically said, we'll sue you. We'll sue you as individuals, we'll sue you as a group, you can't challenge the FDA. And so, but nobody's trying to boss around the state of California, thank God. And so I'm very grateful that now it's called the Carcinogen Identification Commission.
Yes.
And it's part of OEHHA. I'm not sure what the Office of Environmental Health, I don't know what all those acronyms stand for, but so I'm really happy to tell people, that the 24th of this month is the deadline to write to the OEHHA. If you Google OEHHA and aspartame, you'll come to get the direct email address and the email address. And, I just pray that enough Californians will participate in this process that they can really make a voice, because you betcha the companies are they're lining up saying, they're saying the same thing Donald Rumsfeld said, by the way, this is the safest studied food additive in American in the world.
Mm-hmm. Steve, do you mind? Excuse me, Steve, 1 second. Do you mind going back a little bit to the history of when President Reagan was elected and how aspartame was able to be legitimized by the FDA because of Donald Rumsfeld's involvement? Talk about Donald Rumsfeld. Where was he back at that time? He was the CEO of Searle, wasn't he?
That's just what I wanted to get to because I realized I left that out.
Sure.
When Carter was elected, Rumsfeld, he was the youngest Secretary of Defense in the Ford administration. He was like 35 years old.
Yes.
But he was out of a job when Carter came in. So he went back to his congressional district near Chicago and took a job with Searle. And they had a big problem. They had 11 million gallon vat of aspartame, but they had no way, they didn't have FDA approval. So I can't tell you the amount they offered him. I mean, I wasn't there in the late 70s or to hear it, but it's speculated it was 12 to 15 million bucks. If you get this approved, we'll give you this as a tip. So he made a deal. It's all very apocryphal, Peter. There's rumors about how Reagan wanted him to be his running mate, but it wasn't available, so he picked George Bush. It wasn't expensive. It was out riding in the forest in Virginia or something. So he kind of had a favor to call in with Reagan. So he did. He said, I want to get my own guy. We want to find somebody that will agree in advance to approve aspartame, in exchange for becoming Food and Drug Administration Commissioner. Now, that's a huge job. 20 to 25% of the U.S. economy is either food or drugs. So he found a guy out as Secretary of Defense. I'm sure he was aware of this, out at Fort Detrick, Maryland, where they do experiments with biological warfare. I couldn't make this up. This is all proven, And he got a guy that was doing experiments with mind control on prisoners named, some military prisoners, some civil prisoners without their permission, named Dr. Arthur Hall Hayes. And Dr. Hayes evidently agreed to overrule the board of inquiry in the FDA that had repeatedly turned this down, and no further action would be taken until the new administration came in, and then Arthur Hall Hayes overruled the board of inquiry despite all sorts of 15 years of evidence in opposition, and approved. And it was approved for general purposes, not for soft drink. That came along about 2 years later. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the Coca-Cola and the soft drink industry fought this tooth and nail. They said, no, we don't want this. It's a liability. You should read some of the testimony against aspartame being approved for the soft drink industry by Coca-Cola. Mm-hmm. So they've known all along. Yes, everybody's known all along that it's carcinogenic. How can you ingest formaldehyde and have not profound? This is what dead bodies are pickled with. It's not meant for people that are alive. So I've always felt that it was one of the dirtiest and crookedest deals in the history of the FDA, which has got quite a few of them, checkered history. And once it's approved, though, they're reluctant to rescind the approval, and thousands of people have written to them. Millions of people have complained about the medical effects that they've resulted from ingesting it. And it's the most complained about food additive in the history of the FDA. And the number one complaint within those complaints is headaches.
Headaches, you said.
Yeah, unattributed headaches, ranging up to migraine headaches. Well, look at the rest of the complaints: multiple sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, brain tumors, epilepsy. That was one of the things I wanted to, bring up in Hawaii, which has a very high incidence of epilepsy among Hawaiian Native people. Mm. And so, and what happened there was very interesting. This is part and parcel with what is possibly going to happen in Sacramento. We hope not. But what they did was, I had 14 members of the Hawaii Senate signed a bill out of 25 members, so more than a majority signed the bill as co-sponsors, saying they wanted it banned, prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that many. Excuse me, Steve, we're going to have to wrap this up a little bit pretty soon here because we got phone calls coming in for you. Meanwhile, Steve, can you do me a favor? Can you call on the other line,
yes.
which is the line that you should be on, so that we can get the audience to call on this line? That's the line that we have for the audience. So,
I'll do that. When do you want me to do that?
Right away. Do you have the phone number there? I can give it to you. You've got it, right?
562-234-3319.
That's correct. Call me on that line, please.
Will do.
Okay, folks, we're going to continue with our broadcast by accepting phone calls from the public at the phone number 562-438-0505 on the bottom of your screen, 562-438-0505, and we'll take Stephen Fox's call also. It's coming in here in a few minutes. I'm going to pick up his call, and then we're going to go ahead and pick up your call as you call in to talk to Mr. Stephen Fox about the attempts to label aspartame a carcinogen under Proposition 65, at least a warning about it, the possible carcinogenic effects of it based on the research. So that'll be happening. As soon as he calls us, we will continue. Now, any of you can call anytime right now at 562-438-0505. Hello, Stephen. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I've got you on. You're on. People should be able to hear you. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, very good, very good. So we're waiting for people to call.
What do you think about you're a rising star in California politics. Is California going to be able to, fight these lobbyists back? I mean, they're not part of the regulatory process. They've usurped and perverted and prostituted it.
Well, California is an interesting state. It's got very progressive people, but also very conservative people with lots of money in our politics. So it depends on how these legislators will respond and how the commission itself on Prop 65 will respond to the hearings. I believe if the public gets involved, Steve, as we're trying to get them to be aware of this issue by having them on the show, we can stop it, my friend. We can stop it. Enough people call at the number you're talking about. A call's coming in right now. Hang on one second, buddy. Someone's calling for you to talk to you. Good evening. This is Reclaiming Social Justice in the World with Peter Mathews and Stephen Fox, who's our guest today. Who's speaking, please?
Dr. Betty Martini.
Oh, hello, Dr. Betty Martini. Very good, Steve. Would you like to talk to Dr. Betty Martini? Go ahead. Do you have a question for us?
Very often. She's the Joan of Arc of our whole movement. She's the only person that does more than I do, and I really would like to know what she thinks in this context.
The Joan of Arc of the movement. I love it. Please go right ahead, Doctor. You've got the microphone.
Okay. Actually, the reason I called in is because I've been taking the cases of the sick and dying for 26 years on aspartame. And now that Proposition 65 has decided to see if this is a carcinogen, I want people to know that not only it is a carcinogen, but the FDA admitted it. Dr. Adrian Gross told Congress on August the 1st, the Senate, 1985, that beyond a shadow of a doubt, aspartame has caused brain cancer, brain tumors, and since I have all the records, all kinds of cancers. Mm-hmm. And he was reporting against his own FDA, and he said if the FDA violates its own law, who's left to protect the public? And aspartame breaks down to diketopiperazine, a brain tumor agent, and that's why the FDA tried to have them indicted for fraud. But both U.S. prosecutors hired on with the defense team, and the statute of limitations expired. Mm-hmm. And there were so many problems that, as soon as it was on the market, they had congressional hearings. And we've been trying to get it off the market for that long. But every single study on aspartame and cancer done by individual, unbiased researchers have all shown that it is a carcinogen, and only those that have been controlled or paid for by industry have ever said that it wasn't.
May I just interrupt for 1 second on that point? You made a very good point there that the research, as happens in many cases through lobbying activity and research funding by the industry, is completely adulterated because it's paid for by one side, isn't it, doctor? It's paid
Yes,
for by the
there's
sponsors
just
of the
a study
product.
on it.
Yes, and this is the problem with some of this research that the FDA goes along with and uses to hold up as its proof. We need independent research boards in this country that are publicly funded to allow for objective analysis in science of the various products. This is true not just with aspartame, which is very important right now, but with other kinds of chemicals like phthalates and other things that Monsanto has put out, Roundup. It's usually industry research that the FDA goes by. This is very wrong. Am I right about that, Steve? What do you think?
Oh, it's hideous. I mean, they would be totally usurped and manipulated and deformed the whole regulatory process. And I mean, if there's anything that's depressing about the current political situation, well, let's be positive. This is a positive breakthrough,
Yes.
what California is doing.
Yes.
And it will happen if enough of our listeners, if you write a letter, if your friends write a letter, you ask your friends to write on this, because
Yes.
otherwise it won't happen.
Absolutely
And
correct. Can you give out the information once again, Steve? Can you give out the information as to where they can write this or email this letter, email to or letter, hard copy?
I regretfully don't have it in front of me, but it's really simple. If they just Google the term OEHHA, and then...
Let me repeat that. OEHHA.
Yeah, that's the entity that oversees Proposition 65.
Okay, so Google OEHHA. Let me repeat that. Google OEHHA, and then what, Steve?
Aspartame.
And aspartame after that. Yeah.
You'll see the address.
Actually, it's on my website with information from Proposition 65.
Uh-huh.
And it's Mission Possible World Health International by the initials mpwhi.com.
Let me repeat that, doctor. 1 second. mpwhi.com.
Yes, and if people can't remember it, they can remember Mission Possible World Health.
Mission Possible World Health.
Yes, and there's something else the people need to know, because not a lot of people know. But in 2009, 9 scientists from the FDA wrote Congress and said that they were broken. In other words, they're run by Big Pharma, and so they can't make any decisions. And I've tried to ban it twice, and they have this little regulation they use. They write and say we have more important things to do, and that's why it got put off for years. Is they never get through with what they've got to do, and then they don't do anything about it, and that leaves the people, with this deadly poison on the market. And it was best said by Dr. James Bowen, who has Lou Gehrig's from aspartame, and he said, he told the FDA this is mass poisoning of the American public and over 70 countries of the world. It's a very serious matter, not only for the cancer, but they made a deal, and this is in Dr. Monty's book, While Science Sleeps, The Sweetener Kills. They made a deal never to allow the teratology studies to be shown to the public. Took me 8 years to find them. And it causes neural tube defects and autism and all this, and nobody knows it. Pregnant women are using it. They give birth to babies, especially with brain tumors, which is in one of the reports I read today in Australia, that as of 2010, brain tumors were the leading cause in young people. So all the research is there. Anything anybody wants to know is a matter of public record. We still can't get anything done. But just like Dr. Gross told Congress that it violates the Delaney Amendment because it's illegal to put anything that causes cancer in food or drugs.
Yes, the Delaney Amendment. Yes, I remember that. Now, I think Steve wanted to have a word with you. Steve, what were you asking about, sir?
I just wanted to say one thing, and that is that Betty promulgated this show that we're doing to, at least 10,000 people on our list, so a lot of people are listening. And
Fantastic.
I'm just hoping that maybe someone else would want to call in.
Right. Doctor, are you just pretty much finished, so we can have a little more time for some other people? But you've said some very valuable things. Thank you so much. We'll hang up right now and have other people call as well. Thank you,
Okay.
Betty. Appreciate it. We could also extend the show a little bit if we need to. We don't have to cut it off at 7:30. Okay, thank you, Betty. Steve, okay, I'm back again. So that was a good phone call and a lot of valuable information there, sir.
Well,
And
you know,
hopefully
if
we
you,
get some more
if you
folks.
had any idea what that woman, since 1992, 12 to 18 hours a day, she's taken case history, she's held the hands of people that are dying, she's lectured, she's talked to airline pilots, because, the FAA won't let its pilots fly with, Diet Cokes, having consumed them because
Yes.
people are given to seizures. You don't want your pilot to have a seizure while he's at 30,000 feet with 250 people on board.
That's true. Steve, I got a question for you also, if you don't mind. Do you know if any countries have banned aspartame at this time?
Very good question.
Yes.
We have certainly worked on it. One of them, I am told, Azerbaijan bans all artificial sweeteners. But sadly, what happens, I've come close a few times with the president of Uganda, but inevitably what happens is the industries, I will actually say this. I think they go into the health minister or the equivalent of the head of the FDA in various countries, drop a big bag of $100 bills on their desk, tell them they can get their kid a scholarship to Harvard or University of whatever, and then that's the end of it. Yeah, it's approved. It's going to stay approved. The controversies, they weather these challenges very well, but I don't think they're going to be able to push California around. So I'm extremely optimistic that this is going to come through, because California really leads the world in many, many ways.
Especially when it comes to food, the safety of food and health. California does lead the world. And you know what? I've been asking around today, since we were going to be on tonight. I've asked quite a few Californians about this, the aspartame. Have you heard about aspartame and what is it? Right away they knew what it was, that it was an artificial sweetener, has caused some major health concerns, and many people have heard about this, Steve. They may not have the exact details, but they know that something is up. So when they hear this broadcast, when they hear how they can get a hold of the commission that deals with this particular commission for the implementation of Prop 65, they're going to be able to take action. And what's the deadline again? The date that we should get these people moving if they wanted to?
October 24th for emails. Don't mail a letter, snail mail on the 23rd because it won't get there. But
right.
Then November 15th they will have spoken testimony by physicians. Presumably industry will show up and
okay.
But I'll tell you, it's a sad state, and our democracy. This election has really shaken my faith in all the concept of participatory democracy. Something I know is very dear to you also.
Yes, it is, Steve.
And when we roll over and play dead and let these corporations, run everything into the ground, there's no limit. It has to be checked. It has to be stopped.
It has to.
The evil that Ronald Rumsfeld promulgated in 1981 and 1983 must be reversed. It's 35 years this has gone. The dead bodies have piled up. The people that have died from this, the diabetics. That's a pathetic situation. Diabetics can't ingest sugar, so they're unknowing dietitians and physicians and nurses say, we'll use diet products. It makes it worse.
Yes,
so,
I could imagine.
I mean, it's staggering. This is like one of the grossest omissions in the whole human race. It's like how this is allowed to come on. It's monstrous, and it has to be reversed.
And Steve, the interesting telling point is that for many, many years, the FDA would not approve it. Am I right?
Correct. 15 years.
15 years. They had the research and thought so. They were hesitant. The results of that research showed this is a danger product.
Well,
let's hold off.
There wasn't that much research on it. This was just merely chemists looking at the molecule.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like this methyl ester. I mean, a second-year chemistry student could see the flaws in this particular molecule.
Mm-hmm.
But Rumsfeld, there's a YouTube little clip of him announcing, I think it's still there, that he was announcing to the board of directors of Searle that he was going to pull in his markers and get this approved by political means, not medical and scientific, because those had failed. And I mean, it's just laid out right there. So, I mean, I don't want to. I got a fifth, 20% of the New Mexico legislature signed a letter to the FDA commissioner under the very tail end of Bush's era, and asked him to rescind the approval. Well, he answered it. Obama's FDA commissioner never answered anything. Physicians, complaints, nothing.
What did Bush say? What was the answer? What was the answer coming from the White House?
Well, it didn't come from the White House. It came from the FDA commissioner.
Oh, the FDA commissioner sent a response to the New Mexico legislature, or the people that were writing the letter. Okay.
Andrew von Eschenbach was his name. He's a urologist. And he basically said, I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, thank you for bringing this to our attention. If there's any, we will keep examining this thing, and we assure you that we take this very seriously, and we will get, we'll get back to you if anything comes up that indicates this. Well, he dodged the question, of course, but Obama's FDA commissioner ignored the question. The Dr. Margaret Hamburg, and then after she left under a cloud of great suspicion because of her husband and a hedge fund and some deal, she's being sued. It's a dirty deal, so she had to step down. So they got a new guy, a real industry apparatchik named Carlin, and I haven't bothered to write him. But I tell you, I'll say again, this news from California, what's going to go on in Sacramento before the end of the year, this could be the death knell.
Because California is the bellwether state. It's the largest state in the union. If it's decided here, then other states will get the message, the world will get the message, and they may follow suit. Other nations, exactly, in the world. So what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, is give us that information as to where people can send this out. Here comes a call, I believe, right here. Is that our phone here? Hang on a second. Yes, hello. You're out here with Reclaiming Social Justice with Peter Mathews. Who's speaking, please?
Yes, this is Frank speaking.
Frank?
How are you?
How are you doing? Yes, sir. This is Steve. Steve Fox is on the other line. You can speak to him. He can hear you. Go right ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask him, could you please tell us what is aspartame made from, and maybe you can explain the process, how it is made?
Well, it's totally made in a factory situation. I'm not sure about some of the aspects of it. I've heard that all sorts of horrible products are used to, fecal contamination, E. coli, blah, blah, blah. I don't really know about that. But I will tell you one thing. When it's manufactured and transported, like from, for example, the big factory is in Iowa, and it's transported to the Coca-Cola bottling plant in Atlanta, they use hazmat trucks. They use guys in spacesuits. If they stop and spill it, it's so toxic they have to, close down the whole area.
Really? Do you have any kind of footage on that? Any film on that or video of those, what you just described?
I don't know about the video, but I know that in fact it's true. I've seen photographs of the trucks that transport it there, and it's really quite well known. I'm sorry, I really can't answer your question adequately. The precise, it's closely guarded secrets by Ajinomoto, which is growing. And they have a huge factory in France, huge for Europe, huge factory in Brazil for South America. Their patented processes, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Because I'm an art dealer, not a chemist.
Sure, we understand that.
I think we need to find out how it is made, what it is made from, and things like that, so that you can have much more credible, what you're saying. There's a credibility.
Well, honestly, that's a good valid point, but the FDA's own list of 92 symptoms that they started compiling back in the early 80s, that's all the credibility I need, because you have millions of people complaining, and we all have our different areas of knowledge, and chemical manufacturing is frankly, it's not important to me. It's the medical and neurodegenerative effects that are of concern to me. And if you don't think that I'm qualified because I don't know about the chemical process, I understand. I accept the criticism, but we'll have to move on as we can. It's a good question, though. Thank you.
Very good question.
Thank you.
Anything else, Frank?
No, that's it. I just wanted to know.
Okay, thank you for the call, Frank. Appreciate it. Yes, sir, Stephen Fox. This has been a pleasure having you on here, and we got to have you back soon. But don't forget, October 24th is the deadline for everyone to make comments and send letters, to email rather, and you don't want to send snail mail too late. And you go to which site once again to find out how to where to send this?
Well, I want to emphasize before I say that address
Sure.
for the one final time. I want to emphasize, you know, it's always better to err on the side of caution.
Absolutely.
We've seen how this has been abused.
Yes.
You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be an MD. You don't have to be an oncologist to comment on this. You just, the listener can just say, this is really a good idea. It's long overdue.
Yes.
We encourage you to move forward with it. I mean,
Yes.
just saying that is suffices. If you have personal experience with aspartame or Diet Cokes or sugarless gum, you can mention that. If you used to pour equal into your coffee until it gave you blinding headaches, you can mention that too. But again, I'll say this one more time. This is what you Google to look it up. I apologize for not bringing the address with me, but it's a better way to do it actually. Google OEHHA, then aspartame, and then maybe Proposition 65, and you should come to the official announcement from Sacramento on this matter with the address, with the people that are handling it. There is you can do snail mail. I think they said they prefer email, which is great.
Okay.
You have right up to the 24th to file that. And
yes. Let me spell aspartame. Excuse me, Steve. May I spell? Let me spell it for them here. They can hear me more clearly, if you don't mind. ASPARTAME. Once again, ASPARTAME. Aspartame. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah. Correct. And let's make a difference. I mean, let's not roll over and play dead. This is our one chance to. And what a blow this will be to all the neocons and all the people that have manipulated this election. And I mean, I've been working on Bernie Sanders' campaign for a long time because I wanted, I knew that he would go after this. So since that didn't happen, we have to do it.
We, the people, have to do it. Correct.
So thank you for having me on the air.
It's a pleasure, Steve.
I look forward to doing it again.
You bet. And I'd like to go back and, before we go off air, to announce the point that you made, the precautionary principle. Err on the side of caution. It's called the precautionary rule or precautionary principle, which, by the way, has been in place for decades in European countries when it comes to chemicals such as phthalates, and it comes to feeding cattle the right food rather than their own cattle parts, which has caused mad cow disease. The Europeans have been completely in league with the precautionary principle, whereas in the United States, it's been more like let industry do what they want, FDA approves everything, and if there's a problem down the line and people get sick, then we'll fix it. No, human life is way too precious, folks, as you know. Human life is sacred. It is based on the food that we eat and also the thoughts that we have and our spiritual concepts and conceptions of life. But it is very much a physical existence as well. And therefore, something like aspartame should not be allowed on the market as long as there's even any possibility that could be very bad for our health. And there seems to be quite a bit of evidence. Yes.
Rest assured that, the Coca-Cola and the Grocers Association and the restaurant associations, they'll be all lining up to say, this is a safe product. They'll be weighing in on this too.
Of course they will. So the people have to lead on this.
So that's why you need to take the time. I don't care if it's a 2-sentence letter. Just weigh in on this thing. Encourage them because they're doing something good in Sacramento. For it to come this far, it's taken like 7 years for them to get this far.
Yes, this is a milestone, isn't it, Steve? It's definitely a milestone. And so we have to capture the moment. If you don't capture the moment now, it could set the whole movement back quite a bit. So get the word out there, folks. Let these folks know what you think about labeling aspartame under the Prop 65 guidelines as a possible carcinogen and that it should be labeled so people will know and be cautious about not using it if they can avoid using it. Okay, Steve, we're going to have to sign off right now, buddy. This has been good talking to you. It's been a pleasure. And we'll stay in touch and have you back on here sometime soon, okay?
I hope you have a bright future, and I will look forward to doing this again.
Same to you. Thank you, Stephen Fox. Very good, ladies and gentlemen. It's been great having you with me for the little extra overtime here. I think about 40 minutes instead of normally half an hour. It's been a pleasure, and we'll be on tomorrow night again, talking tomorrow night about the election and about the debate that's coming up between the two major candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, on Wednesday, October the 18th. I believe it would be October the 19th, excuse me, Wednesday, October 19th in Las Vegas. And only to mention that it would be nice if all the four candidates who are on the ballots of 47 or more states, including Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, and the Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson, the former governor of New Mexico, could also be on the stage with these folks and get their ideas out there. So we the people can choose the best candidates with the best ideas and the best principles. It is about a marketplace of ideas. Democracy requires a full exchange of ideas, and we should not be trying to eliminate certain people who could actually possibly even have a chance to win the election because they are on so many state ballots. So considering that, you still probably should definitely watch the debates even with two candidates on Wednesday night so you can make up your mind and get the word out about who you're going to vote for, which may be them or maybe someone else. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you. Peter Mathews here with Reclaiming Social Justice for the World. See you on tomorrow night.
Are you off?
Brett?
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to sign out. I don't know what's happening. This thing got in the way. Someone's calling now. We're still on probably. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. This thing got clicked and this thing went off. Hello, Peter Mathews here. Hello?
Just shut down the computer.
Who's calling? Yes, who's calling, please?
Just shut down the computer.
Okay. Here, exit.